Hi. Now, on my last video I said that I wouldn't be buying any more LPs and be sticking to CD purchases, and well, that didn't last very long. Last month I decided what I would do is I would look through my list of to buys. Now, over the years I hear something I quite like and I just jot down the details of the album, and that list has been growing enormously. So what I decided to do was to work my way randomly through some of those items, see if I could find them at a reasonable price and indeed buy them. And 3 of those items that I've initially picked off turned out to be either only available on LP, or that the CDs were extortionately priced and the LP was a much cheaper alternative, and or, as I say, they just weren't available on any other format apart from, say, downloads. And that's the case with the first album that I've purchased recently, and this is a band called Guena, or Guena, I don't know, Guenna, and this is Peak of Jin R, or Jin R. What intrigued me about this one was that some people were describing it as, if Yes did stoner rock, it would sound like this. The good bits of Yes. It doesn't sound like Yes. There's nothing in here really, with the exception of some nice vocal harmonies, which if you heard them in isolation you might think, oh, that sounds a bit like Yes. But this is out and out stoner rock. It is quite bombastic. It is on one level, with the exception of the last track on side 2. It's good if you like that sort of heavy pulsing rock with that constantly chugging bass and guitar line. But quite an interesting album, and it does indeed have harmonies that could be ascribed to Yes, or yes-ish harmonies. It does come with an insert with a nice bit of artwork on, a lyric sheet. I'll do some B-rolls of these LPs and CDs to pop up a little later, but Peak of Jinar by a band called Guena. The next album was a far more interesting album from my perspective, and indeed an album that I've been on the lookout for some time. And this is Rainbird Maiden Flight. Now, this is the only album they ever produced. Very few copies in existence, and originals go for extortionate amounts of money. So I was quite pleased in I think it was 2021, when Sealy Court produced a CD of the album. I heard the CD, I wasn't overly impressed with the sound quality, so I didn't buy it. And then a couple of years later, they introduced this, which is a remastered limited edition LP. I'm also not particularly impressed by the sound quality. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Some of it's quite thin and anemic sounding. Other bits of it are quite nice and sparkly. But at the moment, if you want a copy of Rainbird's Maiden Flight, it is the only real game in town. There was an even worse sounding Russian bootleg some time back, but this is nice. Now, the interesting thing about this is the artwork on the front was what was originally intended for the release, but for some reason it got released with this artwork, and I quite like the fact they've included that as an inner sleeve, with a little bit of blurb about the band and the production of this album. So that was a nice, pleasant find, although, as I say, the sound quality is not as good as I hoped it would be, and that's firmly in the psychedelic rock camp. Right, now we're going back to 2014, and again, I apologise for this. I will put some B-roll up with some close-ups of the covers. Blues Pills. Now, Blues Pills, although the cover looks like you're talking about a 60s psychedelic rock outfit, it is in fact just out and out rock, and that's the self-titled Blues Pills album. First came out in 2014. Three-piece band with female vocals over the top, so four-piece effectively, female vocalist, and the vocals remind me of a very early and raunchy Elkie Brooks, but something I've been looking out for a while. And their follow-up CD, again with the psychedelic type cover. Some people do actually call it psychedelic rock. It isn't really, it is just rock. This came out a few years later, and again, just straightforward rock. Two of the albums that I've been able to tick off my list. Another band I was quite interested in was a band called the Budos Band. Now, the Budos Band are fundamentally a brass and rhythm band, no vocals at all. And if you think of them, I would say, as a Tex-Mex come blues come rock band with some exceptional playing, but they do have this rather nice talent of everything sounding quite loose and flowing, almost as if you're listening in on a jam session. Now, the first album from them was called The Budos Band. The second album was called Budos Band 2. The third album was called Budos Band 3. The fourth album was called, well, Burnt Offerings, or Burnt Offering. And this was one where I finally decided that's the one I wanted. So Budos Band 4, but called Burnt Offering. Budos Band 5 came out, and then Budos Band 6 didn't come out, but an album called Long in the Tooth did. And again, similar style, nice, energetic, brass-driven rock blues. Now finally, something completely different. Very hard to get easily. Many years ago I heard a Greek band called Naxatras, and I instantly quite liked it. It reminded me very much of Osric Tentacles, but on a much smaller scale. And Naxatras 1 came out and I thought, well, that's quite good. Keep an eye on that band. Then Naxatras 2 came out and I thought, that's even better. Naxatras 3 came out, better still. And then Naxatras 4 came out, and I finally decided that it was time to get on board and actually buy my first Naxatras album. Now, the reason it's quite difficult to get is that it's self-published. It's not on any label. So the only place you can get them from, apart from one niche UK supplier, is from Naxatras themselves. They do have a rather nice website. As you can see, I'll put some B-roll up on this, but there's nothing actually on the sleeve to tell you what you're getting. The spines are completely blank on that. But a really nice album. Progressive rock, psychedelic rock, space rock, that sort of genre. Starts off, this one, number 4, with quite an Indian feel to it. And then, as I say, goes down the route of Osric Tentacles, a bit of Tangerine Dream thrown in there. But very, very nice indeed. And really enjoying this. So much so that I decided to buy their latest release, which I ordered from Greece and took nearly a month to get here. Naxatras 5. Much the same. The reason I finally, I think, plumped on buying their albums once we got to number 4 and number 5 was I believe they included a keyboard player for the first time, and the sound seemed to have just blossomed, and very much enjoying these 2 albums, although, as I say, a real pain to get, mainly because they insist on shipping by DHL, and DHL has only one price for minimum price for shipping, so you end up paying nearly 15 euros, but you can get quite a few CDs on that. They do some very nice limited edition LPs, and probably future collectibles, on the grounds that it all seems quite limited edition. There's no label, there's no barcodes. There was a warning on the website saying that this artwork may not, or the artwork shown might not be the finished item. Again, very minimalist, just a straight sleeve, not much information, although we do have a practically unreadable gold and black print sheet in there with some of the lyrics on it and some of the details about the band. The final album I'm going to talk about today is something that I've had on my list ever since I heard about it. And it's a band called The Utopia Strong. It's ambient music. I quite like the fact that you have like a proper LP sleeve and inner sleeve. But one of the most interesting elements for me is that one of the band members is 6 times world snooker champion Steve Davis. It also has Kavus Torabi, who is, I believe, the guitarist currently with Gong, and Michael J. York. Not sure what he plays. Now, I know that Steve Davis, after he retired from snooker, did some techno DJing, but he's always had an interest in music. And this is actually really enjoyable to listen to. I've always enjoyed ambient music. I like to relax to a nice LP of ambient music, put on incense stick, nice glass of dry white wine, chilled, and just kick back and have a good listen. One of my favourite ambient albums is Harold Budd's White Arcades. Hideously expensive to buy on CD. When it came out, it wasn't available on CD, so I got it on LP. But ambient music is ideal for CD, obviously streaming or downloads where you can just let it play on. But with an LP, having to get up halfway through rather spoils the mood of things, as does the pops and clicks, which will inevitably spoil the thing. But I will be getting some more the Utopia Strong LPs, as I really did enjoy that. There are some more LPs and CDs on the way, as I say. One of them is an LP, a jazz bop LP, but we'll talk about that in another video. First recorded in 1957, but finally reissued. There are 2 CDs winging their way to me from Germany. I came across in my researches a website which has a section called Relics of the Past, and just some fabulous stuff on there. And I've already got 20 albums on there in my wish list on the site that were actually on my wish list at home anyway. So I've just ordered a couple from them. They deal mainly in psychedelic rock and krautrock, and the Relics of the Past are 60s, 70s and 80s psychedelic and krautrock. So it'll be interesting to see what their service is like. Hopefully they won't be too long in arriving. Also, what I've got coming are a couple of CDs by a band called Korsesui. They're coming from Denmark. Now, they seem to have quite a laissez-faire attitude. Ordered it a few weeks ago. It's still saying that my order's being processed. The label was set up purely for that band originally, although they do promote other bands now. But it even says on there, frequently asked questions under how long will it take to get here? And they say basically give it a month, because we don't tend to update our website. So don't worry if you see processing still on there. It's probably on its way, and we just haven't got round to notifying you yet. So more on those later. Hope you found some of these CDs and LPs interesting. Do go and check out some of them on YouTube. You can find all of these on YouTube, where you can find the whole album recorded on there, so you can actually have a listen and make up your own mind whether they're worth pursuing or not. But certainly I've been very well pleased with this haul, especially the Naxatras 2 CDs, and the Utopia Strong, featuring 6 times world champion snooker player Steve Davis. Okay, another video to follow up with the other albums when they all arrive. Bye.